we're going to do a case study. We're going to combine some things that I know you're aware of, but seeing how they all work together. So we're going to talk about longevity. You know, in this example, I'm going to show you 25 years, but we're going to talk about inflation, how that affects your purchasing power. And then we're going to talk about taxes. And at the end of this chapter, we're going to put it all together in a case study, and I think it's really going to be eye-opening. There's time, that's longevity, inflation, the hidden cost, or taxes. All right, this is a CSO chart, Commissioner Standard Ordinary Mortality Table. This is what insurance companies used to use to price their products. So they get male and female. So if you're a male born today, you have a better than average chance of making it to 76.6 years. If you're 50, chances are you're going to make it to 79. If you're 80, 87, 90, 93, and if you're 100 years old, congratulations, you got 2 more good years. Now, why does that number go up? Why does it keep going up the older we get? This is nothing more than an average. This chart takes into account everybody in the U.S. You remember back a long time ago, they used to do a census. Every 10 years, somebody would show up at your door with a clipboard. And one of the things they were checking, oh, yep, still alive. They'd ask you a few questions, and that was loaded into a computer, I'm assuming, and that's where they got this information. I would guess they probably do this on a daily basis now with computers. But this takes into account stillbirths, car accidents, disease, wars. All right, it's simply a snapshot in time. I used to say, well, the number keeps going up because the remaining sample is getting healthier. Well, I'm not sure that's true as we get older and older, right? I rephrase it and say, well, the less healthy people have left the sample, is the way to look at it. So this is an inflation chart going back 10 years and 20 years. So over the last 10 years, according to the U.S. government, our average inflation rate has been 2.2%. If you go back 20 years, it's 2.31. Now, you can see 6.8. What do y'all think about those numbers? Do you think they're accurate? I mean, it was given to us by the U.S. government. It's got to be correct, right? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm paying a whole lot more than 6.8% on my gas. My grocery bill has gone up a whole lot more than 6.8. You know, last time I traveled, a lot more than 6.8. How the government figures this, supposedly, is they have a basket of goods. Basket of goods is supposed to represent the broad consumption of the average American. Now, I can tell you an administration, about 40 years ago, was having issues with their inflation numbers. Inflation was starting to creep up. So this president, in his infinite wisdom, went to the basket of goods and said, you know what? Not everybody in America drives a car. So let's take gasoline out of that calculation, and then all of a sudden, his inflation numbers were great. He was a hero. The point I want to make here is, you know how much you are paying more for everything that you consume. So when you sit down with your planner, he's going to use an inflation number and plug it into your plan. Does it make him look better if he uses a high inflation number or a low inflation number?
Low.
Low. By using all inflation does, it says I need that much more income every single year to live my lifestyle. So if he uses 1%, that means you only need a 1% raise to pay for the lifestyle that you've decided you want to live. In our example that I'm fixing to show you, we're going to use 3. 3 is probably closer to the average. I'm not saying inflation is 3, but it's a nice round number, and you know I like round numbers. All right, this chart is based on 3% inflation. Here's an example of somebody that retired today, and they're living the lifestyle they want to live, and it's costing them $7,500 a month. That $7,500 is coming from Social Security, pensions, and their own investments. Okay? So, if they want to continue living that same lifestyle, 5 years from now at 3% inflation, it's going to cost them about $8,700 a month. So $1,200 more a month to live the same lifestyle that they had 5 years ago. 15 years from now, that same lifestyle is going to cost them $11,600 a month. And remember, we're all going to live at least 25 years in retirement. $15,000 a month to be able to do the things that they did when they first retired. All right. I used to call this my teacher example. This is an example of somebody who's on a fixed pension. So teachers in Texas have what they call TRS, Teacher Retirement System. It is a fixed pension with no cost of living adjustment. So if you retire at age 60 with $2,000 a month, when you're 80, you're still getting the same $2,000 a month. This is how it would affect teachers. So right off the bat, $7,500 from all their sources, they're doing okay. 5 years into their retirement, while they still have $7,500 landing in their checking account every single month, it's only buying $6,400 worth of goods and services. 15 years in their retirement, that same $7,500, it only buys $4,700 worth of gas, groceries, utilities. 25 years in retirement, their lifestyle is basically cut in half. Now, what would you do to cut your lifestyle in half? You ever think about that? That'd be kind of hard to do. You'd have to give up on a few things.
Eating.
Is that dog
see,
food
I
up
don't know if
there?
you can see this, but this says dog food. That's probably an extreme, but hey, it could be right. So, this is something. So when I graduated UNT in 1990, good gosh, I wish it was 2000. This was being taught in our investment class. And tell me if you've seen this before, because it's still being taught at some level. When we're young, let's say we're just out of school, 25 years old, when it comes to investing, how are we taught to invest? How should we invest when we're young?
We're aggressive and less aggressive over time.
Aggressive, right? So we're going to swing for the fences because we have time on our side. Believe it or not, a 2008 to a 25-year-old is fantastic. Nobody talks about that. When the market drops like it did, they put money in the market, it's going to do explosive things for them. But then we're taught, as we get to be, well, I'm fixing to tap out of that area right there. But when you're halfway to retirement, 45, 55, we're taught to slow down. We're going to inject some bonds in our portfolio for volatility purposes, right? So we're going to slow down a little bit. And then when you're right at retirement, or retirement, you can see retirement, it's 5 years from now, we're taught to slam on the brakes and go bonds or income producing instruments. You all seen that? This is exactly the plan that my parents were on when I got in this business. And they didn't know why. It's what their parents did. So I'm going to show you this example. I call this my bond example. Why this is probably not going to work in today's environment. This is a person who has $1 million and they've either got a bond or a portfolio of bonds producing 5%. Now, for this example, they're going to be in the 28% tax bracket. So you take that $1 million, you earn $50,000 in interest. That's 5%. Now, whether we pay it out of this pocket or we pay it out of this pocket, I've got to settle up with Uncle Sam. So 28% goes to Uncle Sam. That leaves us $3,000 a month to do something with. Now, most of us would take that $3,000 a month and we would spend it. What would we start the next year with?
$1 million.
$1 million, right? Earn our 50, pay our taxes, $3,000 a month or $36 a year, we'd probably spend it. We'd start the next month. You may not realize it immediately. This is what's going to happen to you. It may take you 2, 3, 4 years in retirement, but all of a sudden you're going to realize that $3,000 a month doesn't buy as much as it used to. Now I need $4,000 a month. I need $5,000 a month. By being conservative, by utilizing this strategy, you are going to be going backwards. Because you're going to have to spend more and more. You're going to be dipping into your principal just to try to maintain that lifestyle. Now, if you want to keep up with inflation, what you should do, 3% inflation, you take 30,000 of that 36, reinvest it. Now we're going to earn 5% on 3% more money. That's how you stay ahead. The problem is, because we're so conservative, we've only got $6,000 worth of net spending available to us on $1 million. Now, if you can live on $6,000 for every million that you have, I'm not even sure why you're taking this class. Most people are not in that boat. So you see here, this is not necessarily going to work. So, what do we need to earn on our money while we're retired? This is a simple calculation. Withdrawal. Let's say that we need 5%. We've done the math. We feel like if we have 5% of what our nest egg is currently, that we're going to be able to live the lifestyle that we want to live. I'm going to go back to inflation. I'm going to still use 3. So you add 3% to it. Now, according to this calculation, this formula here, if I can earn 8% average in retirement, I'm going to have enough money to spend, 5%, and it's going to be going up by 3% a year, keeping up with the cost of living. The only problem is somebody's been left out of this calculation. Somebody hasn't been paid yet. Who is that?
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam. So if you want to figure out, now this is not in your book, okay, so make sure you write this down. If you want to figure out the tax equivalent that you need to earn, you take the withdrawal rate divided by 1 minus your tax rate. So let's assume for a second that your tax rate is 25%. Again, nice even math. So 1 minus 25% is 0.75. So 5% divided by 0.75 is 6.67. I'm going to add back in my inflation rate. So if I can average 9.67 throughout retirement, I'll have a nest egg that's steadily growing by 3%. I will be able to pay my tax, net my 5%, and life is good. So it's been my experience when I'm talking to people like yourselves, there's 2 groups of people that I kind of categorize you guys in. There are those that absolutely love your kids, your family, and there's those that want the last dollar in their retirement. They want to spend it on that last day. They want to leave this world owing the undertaker. 2 different groups of people. People that follow this is the people that love their children. Because you're going to leave a legacy. You're going to leave more money. What I'm fixing to show you is an example of those who want to spend the last dollar. All right, so we're going to go into this case study. I'm going to go through the assumptions first. Here we have a couple. They are 50 years old. They plan on retiring at 65, so 15 years into the future. And they feel like they can live on 80% of what they're currently making. If they were going to retire today, if they cut back 20%, they feel like they'd be okay. Now, have y'all ever thought about cutting back in retirement? That used to be standard operating procedure when I first started in this business. Somebody would come in our office and say, I'm about to retire, let's talk. And first thing we'd say, okay, great. Do you want to live on 70 or 80% of what you're currently making? The problem with that formula nowadays is, well, you're seeing it this year, right? Inflation is out of control. Not only that, healthcare related expenses are even higher. So in our practice, we've now started shooting for 100%. Say we want to match what you're currently living on now. Everybody's different, but we're going to assume this couple knows what they're doing. They're currently living on $8,000 a month. They happen to know that in 15 years when they retire, their combined Social Security is going to be $2,500, and we're going to assume that they don't have a pension. Because again, most people don't have pensions. Again, we're going to use 3%. Remember, they're going to retire 15 years from now at age 65, so they're going to live 25 years in retirement. They're going to make it to 90. All right, so we're just going to go through the math. So 80% of what they're living on today is $6,400. So if they were retired right now and they had $6,400 a month coming in, they feel like they'd be okay. Multiply that by 12, that means $76,800. Now, I'm going to subtract out what we know they're going to get in the future with Social Security. Why am I doing that? Because I want to figure out how much are we going to have to provide. Right? So government's guaranteed because it's backed by the paying ability of the government, and plus, if they run out of money, they'll just tax us more. So Social Security is going to be okay. So you subtract out $2,500 a month, that's $30,000 a year. So if this couple were retired today, out of their investments, their IRAs, 401ks, stock accounts, they're going to have to pull out $46,800. Now, here's where I would subtract the pension if they had one. But again, we're assuming they don't have one, so it's still $46,800. So this inflation factor chart, the whole chart is based on 3%, and it's got years, so you go all the way down to year 15, because that's how far in the future they're going to retire, and you get an inflation factor of 1.558. So $46,800 in today's dollars, multiplied by the inflation factor of 1.558, what that tells me is in 15 years, out of my investments, I'm going to have to pull $72,914 out of my IRAs, 401ks, stock accounts to pay for an 80% lifestyle. Are you with me? So 15 years from now, $72,914 is what I need to pull out of my investments to pay for an 80% lifestyle. So let's see how it plays out. So year one. That 50-year-old couple today is now 65. First year, they're going to pull out $72,914. The very next year, to maintain that 80% lifestyle, they're going to pull out $75. That's the 3% inflation. So after 5 years of being retired, they're up to 82, but so far they've spent $387,000. So 10 years into their retirement, instead of 72, it's now 95. So far they've spent $835,000. 15 years, they've spent 1.3, 20 years, 1.9, and there's the magic, 25 years. They're pulling out $148,000 a year to live that 80% lifestyle, and during that 25 years of retirement, they spent $2.6 million. What do y'all think about that? This is usually when people go, oh, crap, I'm never going to be able to retire. Now, do you think you need $2.6 million to live that lifestyle? Let's just assume for a second that all your numbers happen to correspond with all of our assumptions. Do you think you need $2.6 million in an account day one to live that lifestyle?
No, because I'm going to grow my money.
Huh?
I'm going to grow my money.
Okay, so there's 4 things that we can do to make sure we don't have to have that much money. One, we're going to invest it, right? Our money's not going to be stuck under a mattress or in a shoebox in the closet. We're going to invest it and it's going to grow. So that's one way. What are the other 3?
Die early.
Die early. 25 years of retirement, maybe that's too long. Maybe we, at 20.
Cut your lifestyle even further.
Exactly. So we're trying to live an 80% lifestyle. Maybe we're just overshooting. Maybe a 70% lifestyle or 60%. I can tell you my mother-in-law was bound and determined to retire at 55. She had raised 2 kids on her own, worked hard, and she did not have nearly enough money to retire at 55, but she did it. And boy, where there's a will, there's a way. She just cut back, and she was the youngest one at the senior center every year, teaching stained glass and dancing, and so you can do it. Wouldn't necessarily be fun. What's another thing we can do there's one more thing we can do to make sure we don't have to have that kind of money day one. So Diane said we could cut 5 years off the back end.
Well, we can work longer.
Yeah, we can cut them off the front end too, right? So what happens if we work 5 more years? That's 5 more years of not taking money out. That's always a good thing. That's probably 5 more years of adding money.
I feel like I'm listening to us.
Yeah.
Kind of a double compounding, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens to our Social Security if we wait 5 more
A
years?
little bit more.
We've maxed out our Social Security, so all the numbers look a lot better. So those 4 things will help you make sure that you don't have to have 2.6 to live that lifestyle. All right, so let's say, remember those 3 circles I drew? Let's say that you buy into that strategy. I don't want to take risks, I just want, slam on the brakes, be happy with 5% growth rate throughout retirement. In a 25-year retirement, that factor of 2.0393, you multiply that by your first year need, that 72,914, and what that tells me is day 1 of retirement, in an account averaging 5%, you'll need $1.46 million to produce that 2.6 that we spent during that 25-year period. Does that make sense? So, that factor of 20, so what if we said, well, if we take a little bit more risk and average 7, see the factor drop dramatically. So now you take 16 and multiply it by 72,914. It's a smaller number. This is a great chart. I would encourage you to go home and you can apply this to your own numbers. And it will give you a good indication of how much you need. Now, does this make anybody nervous? Averaging 9.67? Do you know what the S&P's average for the last 30, 40 years?
About 10.
A little over 10%. So it's doable. Now, getting to that average, is it always going to be 9.6, 9.6, 9.6? No. We're going to have 2022 where we're down 20%. And then we're going to have years where we're at 30. But once you even it out, the market has always averaged over 10. So it's done well. At some point I would try to inject that, do you know what the average do-it-yourself investor makes on their investments? About 3%. How is that possible? When all they'd have to do is just put it in the market and close their eyes. It's that simple. It's because we make short-term decisions with long-term money. So the 450, 500 families that we work with, that's part of the education. We're constantly educating them on the only way you can lose in the stock market is to get out when stocks are down. If you only get out when stocks are up, you're not going to lose money. And once they understand that, I get very few phone calls when the market's down. Now there's going to be a couple. I have one lady that calls me every time the market's down. She says, I know exactly what you're going to say. I just need to hear you say it. She already knows the speech, but she wants to hear my voice. She wants me to explain to her again. She goes, okay, I feel better. And that's a big part of our job. It's not just knowing all this stuff. It's not just knowing products. It's managing behavior.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's important to work with somebody throughout retirement. Any questions? That's it.